Righteous dispensation of news is believed to be one of the Purusharthas. Whether it's right or wrong, we are in that business. Welcome once again to News Analysis. News Analysis, a weekly magazine on current affairs. To begin with the main points in a nutshell. CIA is disputed on civilian toll in drone strikes. Protests force Israel to confront wealth gap. Politicians and protesters assail British police. Syria unrest, US calls for wider sanctions. England riots, Cameron says police admit to wrong tactics. China manufacturer China Sienna recalls 54 bullet trains. And now the news in detail. CIA is disputed on civilian toll in drone strikes. On May 6, a Central Intelligence Agency drone fired a volley of missiles at a pickup truck carrying 9 militants and bomb materials through a desolate stretch of Pakistan near the Afghan border. It killed all the militants, a clean strike with no civilian casualties, extending what is now a year-long perfect record of avoiding collateral deaths. Or so goes the United States government's version of the attack from an American official briefed on the classified CIA program. Here is another version from a new report compiled by British and Pakistani journalists. The missiles hit a religious school, an adjoining restaurant and a house, killing 18 people, 12 militants, but also 6 civilians, known locally as Samad, Jamshed, Daras, Iqbal, Nur Nawaz and Yusuf. The civilian toll of the CIA drone campaign, which is widely credited with disrupting Al-Qaeda and its allies in Pakistan's tribal area, has been in a bitter dispute since the strikes were accelerated in 2008. Accounts of strike after strike from official and unofficial sources are so at odds that they often seem to describe different events. Protests force Israel to confront wealth gap. They are mainstays of the society pages and glossy magazines. Some are praised for the hospital wings they have built. Others are gossiped about for their quirks. But these days, the handful of wealthy families who dominate the Israeli economy are assuming a new role. One of the chief targets of the 10-city protesters who have shaken Israel in the past month. The tycoons, as they are known even in Hebrew, are suddenly facing enraged scrutiny as middle-class families complain that the country once viewed as an example of intimate equality today has one of the largest gaps between rich and poor in the industrialized world. The 10-city protesters who have shifted the public discourse by demanding affordable housing and other essential goods issued a document this week calling for a new socio-economic agenda topping their goals, minimizing social inequalities.
It's not even that interesting to their editors back in the studios. Okay, there's a protest. Well, what exactly is a protest? A social protest? Well, is it a revolution? It's not the same kind of story that they're used to, and it's not as big and dramatic as some of the bigger revolutions happening around the Middle East.
Politicians and protesters assail British police. Britain's latest convulsion of rioting and looting began with protests against the police handling of a killing in North London. But it soon turned into something much bigger, a challenge to state authority that shook the political elite, and for the police itself, one more bleak entry in a catalogue of crisis and contamination. In Parliament, recalled from recess on Thursday, a chorus of lawmakers denounced the police responses to the riots as incompetent. One said that officers were instructed to stand and observe looting. Prime Minister David Cameron said he would look to an American expert for help, William J. Bratton, who helped reduce crime levels in New York City in the 1990s.
We're making technology work for us by capturing the images of the perpetrators on CCTV, so even if they haven't been yet arrested, their faces are known and they will not escape the law. We are working with the police, the intelligence services and industry to look at whether it would be right to stop people communicating via these websites and services when we know they are plotting violence, disorder and criminality.
Ever since the murder of a black teenager in 1997, the British police, who once held an affectionate place in life here, have been embroiled in contentious episodes ranging from the mistaken shooting by plainclothes officers of a Brazilian electrician, Jean-Charles de Menezes, in the aftermath of July 7 London subway and bus bombings in 2005, to the death of a newspaper vendor manhandled by police at a protest against globalization in 2009. Only weeks ago, London's Metropolitan Police, widely known as Scotland Yard, faced public questioning over a failure to fully investigate a phone hacking scandal that led to the resignation of two of most senior of officers. Syria unrest, U.S. calls for wider sanctions. U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton has called for wider international sanctions on Syria as the government's violent crackdown on dissent continues. Mrs. Clinton said China and India in particular could increase pressure because their energy investments. She said the U.S. did not want to call for Mr. Assad to stand down without getting the backing of other countries. Activists say the army killed at least 24 people on Thursday, and new protests flared after dawn prayers on Friday. More than 1,700 people have died and tens of thousands of people have reportedly been arrested since uprising against the 41-year rule of President Bashar al-Assad's family began in March. This week, Washington added to its existing sanctions on Syria by including its main commercial bank and mobile phone company, and warned that more could follow. Mrs. Clinton said other countries also needed to exercise their influence over the regime. What we really need to do to put the pressure on Assad is to sanction the oil and gas industry, she said, citing Europe, China and India as powers with energy investments in Syria, and adding that the U.S. also wanted Russia to stop selling arms to the Assad regime. When asked why Washington has not called yet outright for Mr. Assad to stand down, Mrs. Clinton said the U.S. was focusing on building the chorus of international condemnation. Rather than U.S. saying it and nobody else following, we think it's important to lead and have others to follow us as well. England riots. Cameron says police admit to wrong tactics.
Why people care so much about this issue. The provision of good, high-quality public service pensions goes right to the heart of the kind of society that we are. It is, if you like, a vital part of the contract between all those who work in our schools and our hospitals and our fire stations and police stations, councils and prisons, and the rest of the country. It's about saying, you've spent your career serving others, so we will look after you in old age.
The police admit they got their right tactics wrong, the Prime Minister has said, as he announced measures to help homeowners and businesses. David Cameron told MPs the riots in cities across England were criminality pure and simple, but there were far too few police on the streets. In an emergency recall of the Parliament, he announced a crackdown on face masks and a review on the use of curfews. More than 1,500 arrests have been made since the unrest began on Saturday. Mr. Cameron told MPs that it had become clear that there had been problems in the initial police response to the disorder. There were simply far too few police deployed on our streets, and the tactics they were using weren't working, said the Prime Minister. Police chiefs have been frank with me about why this happened. China manufacturer China CNR recalls 54 bullet trains. Chinese state-owned train manufacturer China CNR will recall 54 bullet trains as problems continue to plague the industry. The particular model were used on the Beijing-Shanghai high-speed rail line, the firm said in a statement. The announcement comes a day after officials placed a temporary halt on all new high-speed rail projects. The government continues to face public fury over a crash that killed 40 people last month. The incident, which took place on a separate high-speed rail line near Wenzhou, led to allegation of mishandling on the part of authorities and has called the country's flagship project into question. This after the rail link between Shanghai and Beijing had already run into delays because of power cuts and technical reasons after it was launched in June. The State Council said on Thursday that the safety checks would be carried out on existing lines, speed limits would be enforced, and the safety of all new projects would be re-evaluated before being approved. We will suspend from time being the examination of approval of new railway construction projects, the Council said in a statement. However, the Council also said China will unswervingly continue its development of high-speed railways. U.S. military loses contact with hypersonic aircraft. The U.S. military lost contact with an unmanned hypersonic test aircraft shortly after its launch, defense officials have said. The Falcon Hypersonic Test Vehicle 2, HTV-2, capable of reaching any target in the world in less than an hour, began a test flight from atop a rocket on Thursday. Contact was also lost with similar craft during the first mission. The HTV-2 is designed to travel at 21,000 kilometers per hour. The Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, DARPA, which is funding the HTV-2 program and overseeing the tests, said the smart craft was capable of reaching speeds of Mach 20. The aircraft took off using Minotaur 4 rocket from the Vandenberg Air Force Base in California early on Thursday. Engineers programmed the HTV-2 to launch from the edge of space, separate from its rocket, and crash into the ocean. No information was available on whether the goals of the mission were achieved.
Today that it had conducted this test as planned. The vehicle had gotten away from the rocket ship that you mentioned a moment ago, and then we don't know what happened. We presume the vehicle splashed down in the Pacific, or crashed in the Pacific more likely, as it was programmed to do if it lost contact with controllers. But beyond that, we don't have many details at this point.